Make a motion.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Johnson, supported by Councilman Bazura. Is there any discussion? Councilman Ramik?
Mr. Chairman, to Jason. In reference this amount of monies that the mayor's office, clerk's office, and treasurer, can you explain to me what that was? What's it for?
The amounts that were removed?
Yeah, $8,400, $8,400, and $4,900.
Yes, those were amounts removed were estimated car allowances.
Do we have car allowances?
Currently, to my knowledge, we do not.
Do you have any idea when our last time we did have a car allowance?
To my knowledge, I don't know when the last time we have.
Now, would that recommendation, who did that recommendation come from as far as putting those items in there from those offices?
It was part of the mayor's proposed budget.
That was the mayor's proposal. So that means that basically someone was going to get a car. My biggest concern on this too is
I do have a question, Chairman Willie, I do have a question as well.
Okay, Councilman Ramik has the floor right now, and I'll come back to you.
what I'm concerned with is if in fact it falls under account 732 under education, training, and other bonus, if that hadn't have been spotted, they would have gotten allowances for cars that we've never had. Correct? Do we have any idea why it wasn't put under with something said that they'd have been vehicles?
Well, through Chair, the reason why it was put in that line item because at the time the budget was presented, it was like a stipend, so almost a form of payroll, and that was the only line item we have for that type of allowance.
How would that have been paid?
Again, that way that it was budgeted was through a payroll item.
So it would have been a payroll item added to those individuals' payroll, correct?
That's how it was budgeted. How it actually would have gone, I'm not exactly sure because I believe it was still being reviewed how to pay it, but on the budget it was put into a payroll line item.
With that being said, my concern would have been that they would have been getting pay raises, and they just got pay raises, that, not everybody, but how would the pay raises, wouldn't that have kind of violated the issue in reference, although that might not be a question for you, but my concern is, would that have been an issue with 1099s, or would that have been just straight through pay, which we would have never known? We were just making payments to someone for something we never knew existed.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor?
I don't know that those questions should have been directed at Jason, but I'm happy to answer them. To your first question, virtually every mayor before, mayor, clerk, and treasurer before this administration, all either A, received a vehicle allowance, or B, had an actual city vehicle. No different than virtually every city department had. When we took office in late 2013, the clerk and I, we opted not to consider that at that time because of the city's financial situation. This budget was prepared approximately 6 weeks ago before knowing what we know today related to the COVID virus. We don't have any issues of having this removed. However, with that being said, there was no underhanded attempt to pull anything over anybody. This budget does not take effect till July 1st. We weren't sure if we were going to procure a vehicle or if it was going to be through a mileage reimbursement, which is perfectly allowable under the law, or if it was going to be a vehicle reimbursement as other mayors have done. In terms of the amounts that were established, we took these from 2006 amounts, which was the previous administration at that point in time, and established a baseline for the purposes of budgeting. These were simply budgeted numbers so we could have the discussion. I hope that answers all your questions.
It don't.
Fair enough.
And you want to answer some questions, and did you ever inform anybody else in reference this is what you were going to do? Did any of the count, was any of the count, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, which, continue.
So you're saying that you just brought it back because you thought it was the right thing to do at this time?
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor.
when we prepared this budget 6 weeks ago, we included it because we feel that 5 years removed after taking office and using our vehicles, that we should be considered just as any other department head, that there is a vehicle made available to the elected officials of the city of Taylor.
Do I have one?
I have another question.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Ramik has the floor right now, but he asked the mayor a question, Mayor.
I do not know if you have a vehicle,
I don't.
Councilman.
Not supplied to me by the city.
Fair enough.
Some people say we're full-time, some people say we're part-time. But my concern is, we're looking at this kind of money, all of a sudden it pops out of nowhere that you did have discussions with other individuals in reference to doing this, especially maybe in the new treasurer's office because it's part-time. So we were going to give them, on top of this, an allowance for a vehicle too.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor.
The treasurer has a job to do, Councilman. That job may be different from a city council position. And yes, we were considering allowing a vehicle for that individual as well.
So after all these years, all of a sudden, everybody's going to get a car.
Mr. Chairman,
Or get an allowance.
it's not all these years, sir. It's been done virtually by every administration prior to right now.
To include Mr. Lamrant's.
I believe to include, yes, Mr. Lamrand.
Got an allowance. Did
I'm
the
not sure if it
treasurer
was
get an allowance?
mileage reimbursement. There's three forms you can do. You can take an actual vehicle, you can submit mileage reimbursement, or you can have a vehicle reimbursement.
So you and other individuals would have gotten additional pay, which wasn't approved by the board that usually approves our pay, and it has to either be voted on or ignored. How would that ever, would you have gotten a 1099 in reference to that?
Mr. Chairman, if there was a vehicle reimbursement, it would have been taxable.
Yes.
If it was a mileage reimbursement, I'll defer to the CFO, but I do not believe that's taxable. Is that correct?
Well, now, like I said, now we're getting into some tax law, but mileage reimbursement, if it was a straight mileage reimbursement, then no, it would not be taxable. If it was a stipend where it's not based on mileage, then it would be a W-2, not a 1099, but a W-2, and it would be taxed accordingly through the payroll tax.
And if it was just a city-provided vehicle, then it would have been just a city-provided. The city would have procured it and owned it.
So basically, what you wanted to do is basically, you just felt it was the right time to get a car and be paid for. I have the city pay for your car.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to answer this for the third and last time to the
And that's
councilman.
nice of
I'm
you.
not going to go back and forth.
Correct.
Councilman, you have the budget in front of you. You know how many vehicles we have. Every department, including the 23rd District Court, has vehicles. Yes, after 5 years of being in office, I feel that it's time for the elected officials that are here all day, every day, to at least have a vehicle that's available to them, much like every other city around here. So, my final answer. Thank you.
Could you have taken a car out of the pool? Could any of those people taken and used one of the cars out of our pool?
Mr.
Don't
Chairman,
we have extra cars that sit out there?
building department cars?
Any car.
We have vehicles, but they're assigned to specific departments to do their job.
With them, which, couldn't you have bought maybe an extra
Real quick,
car?
I want to remind both of you guys, please come through the chair. We're getting in this rhetoric back and forth.
I just wanted to make sure, just so you understand it, and I want the public to understand, it's just awful funny that this occurred now. I won't bring up anything else. But it's kind of amazing to me that $21,700, but we have positions in the city that we don't want to fill sometimes, we can't be filled. So
Mr.
we're
Chairman,
willing to spend $21,700 so you and other individuals might have a car or get a little bit of extra money for that car.
Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I think I've answered it clearly. I don't think it helps the councilman to understand it anymore if I continue to answer it for him. The fact of the matter is, there are no positions that aren't considered. This budget contains positions of every position that's currently under layoff to be recalled. Nothing's being compromised. We have reduced this budget by $2.2 million from the previous year. In closing, the timing of it with COVID is not proper and not appropriate, but I do not think it's that we're asking for too much.
Well, just,
Okay. As of
Mr. Chairman, just to run it through, my personal opinion, I think it is too much, period. Thank you.
You're entitled.